Hello, I'm Aubrey Shepard. It's the 9th of January 2011. We'll show some Fayetteville photos. Look at that. That one's from 2005, and it's from the north side of Martin Luther King Boulevard, which back then was still called 6th Street, and that's the Aspen Ridge Development Site. And it had been cleared of trees, except for a few around the edges, including and that's a view of how muddy it looked after a big rain. You can see the Pinnacle Food Plant in the background in that photo. In this photo, you can see the Moody property just to the south. You can see a few piles of trees out there that they had taken down and had not all been burned, but they burned all the wonderful lumber they could have had from that because they were in such a hurry to get rid of the debris so they could level the land for a project that they never were able to finish. You see, that is well, you can actually walk up that embankment back there. That crosses the town branch of the West Fork of the White River, and it was a muddy mess, and all that was running downstream. That's from Pinnacle Prairie at 12th Street looking north to the development site, and that's at left is the corner of World Peace Wetland Prairie, and you can see how the parkland right adjacent to it, they thought they were going to put buildings on the end. You can see what the water looked like running down under the bridge at 11th Street. That's how pretty the water was during that time. And it still gets that way, but it's not as frequent. That was what they called a little detention pond. And now it's got vegetation around it and so forth, but all that was filled earth. That was low, low land. At right is the Moody property. At left is some of the land that was cleared and then filled. And you can see that how much higher the land is there, and the silt fences were not very effective in keeping that mud out of the stream. It's Moody property on the right. That's fill dirt on the left. That was, historically, that land to your left was the low wetland with the big willow trees I've shown pictures of on here before. And this is the Moody property. They've got, which, as you could see, ended up being surrounded by higher ground. So instead of water running off there that didn't soak in, it stands out there longer and runs into drains and so forth. But it goes down the creek, and when it comes off construction sites like this, it's muddy like that. This is the Moody property corner at the northwest corner of their property, and you could see in that picture that it had been bulldozed. Part of their land was bulldozed. They took off trees from their land and put in their silt fences and stuff, but I don't think they ever bothered to pay them for the trees or even apologize for digging up the mud and destroying the vegetation on their land. Till next time, this is Aubrey Shepard asking you to do your part to help keep the water clean, the air pure in the Woods Creek. See you. Well, just a few more pictures this evening, again on the 9th of January 2012, and totally different. Let's see something prettier. That's a yellow-bellied sapsucker. It's a woodpecker, in other words. And there you can see it from a distance. That's on a big old willow tree at World Peace Wetland Prairie. It's in pretty bad shape. It keeps losing limbs, and that part's just a snag. But, you know, the woodpeckers like that, and there you can see that tree way in the background, and that's where I was standing the whole time, so you see what a zoom lens can get you. But anyway, that old tree and the other parts that are already down have provided a lot. The woodpeckers create holes, they nest in them one year, then they make a new one next year, and the other types of birds that nest in cavities, in holes, hollows, they use the holes of woodpeckers. So next year it might be wrens and chickadees using the holes that woodpecker makes this year while digging for insects and while creating a nest site for itself. Okay, that's the sale barn property. I've shown those in recent weeks at different stages, and you can see downtown in the background, and that's the actual building. That's the senior center in the background, kind of in the center right from the National Cemetery over the sale barn property that's been torn down. That's zooming on the on the senior center over behind the sale barn over there on the next hill. You see, a lot of nice things like the senior center are built on hills, but the sale barn property adjacent to the National Cemetery will have 4-story student apartments, which are not, I would think, necessarily need to be on top of them. Hey, look, there's some guys in the studio from last week, and you can see Zam on there doing his show, and these guys are seeing that the thing gets put together right and recorded properly. This is out on Pinnacle Wet Prairie, and there was a surveyor out there. And anytime they survey any part of the neighborhood, they seem to come through there and everybody else's land to survey. That's some of the wetland on Pinnacle Wet Prairie. And this time, well, later in the winter and spring, you're going to see mallard ducks and you'll see Canada geese using that area all the way up around the factory and in that flow area where you see the willow trees in the background. And they actually nest in those places if they're left alone. Just hope people don't let their dogs off leash when they walk on the trail. Hope nobody drives vehicles out there. They're not supposed to. It's a city trail. But it's just awfully handy for those students who like to just kind of do whatever students do on everybody's surrounding area. And I'm afraid that might happen to the National Cemetery. These are newer pictures from what was going on at the National Cemetery or the sale barn adjacent to it. And so you can see it from different angles. That is the wonderful building that I said before should be on the National Register of Historic Places, because people aren't building cattle barn, sale barn, auction sites like that. Wonderful auction room. Sometime I'll bring back some old pictures of that. But anyway, I guess the reason to show you some of this is that there are things that are disappearing. And just like the trees and the woods and the people that lived in the old houses and the mobile home parks that were on the Aspen Ridge site, and all the wildlife, all the deer and and homeless people are sort of like wildlife because they're doing the natural thing and living in the woods where they can find protection while the rest of us are struggling to try to keep a roof over our heads. But fact is that we're just all God's creatures, and I doubt that he would really want us to destroy his creation. So there is an organization called Caring for Creation that some of the churches have that I really respect what they try to do in educating people. Till next time, this is Aubrey Shepherd asking you to do your part to help keep the water clean, the air pure, and the woods green. See ya.